Anyway, well, Steven, thanks for coming over here into my little studio here. In case you don't know, my name is Matthew Olmican for the Hornets, and I love to team up with Sports on Focus, especially with Steven Akadek. And that brings us to our Level 2 preview. We did this last year, and now I said, we've had crazy football. Steven, help me or guide me through this mess of competition that we're seeing. And I think it would be a great time to start with the division, for me, that matters, Division 5.
We'll start big picture. Division 5, you've got, obviously some rematches. For the Colby fans, St. Croix Falls is going to be a familiar team.
All too familiar.
Level 2 game from last year.
Yep.
Colby won that 28-0, but from the sounds of it, I wasn't there. You were there, but it sounds like it was a little closer than the score reflected.
That's the weird part. Obviously a lot of football, especially the game of how it went, is dictated in the sentence of when somebody states the score. Once you hear the score, you can determine that was a close game or that was a blowout. That game, nobody talks about the score when people elect about it. People rolled in there and they saw how that offense for St. Croix went, and to me, it was it rivaled the Edgar running game, if not a little at the moment, if not better. Like if somebody was going to say hey, let's create another running attack similar to Colby, that was it. And granted, you had the Duran team from last year with the Bauer boy, but that was one dude. Whereas St. Croix Falls had their dude, but they had lots of dudes. Mm-hmm. It was a ground and pound offense that was very similar to Colby. And I think that's why it was weird when finally the score board read 0 in the fourth quarter that it was 28-0, because that game could have been way different.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that one, but you've got a couple more rematches. Amherst, Wittenberg, Burnhamwood. Wittenberg won that one 27-22 back in week 5. Horicon, and one of my favorite towns to say, Horicon Eustisford, taking on Lomira. Horicon Eustisford won that in week 1, 26-13. A couple other storylines. In that bottom opposite side of the bracket from Colby, the exact opposite side, you've got 8-seed Mayville and 7-seed Lomira that both won week 1.
What happened there?
Lomira is a little more understandable. They were playing an independent school that's not in a conference yet, Milwaukee Academy of Science. They only played 6 games. They were 4-2. They got a seed based on that, but
I see.
And then Mayville took down Winnebago Lutheran, who was 8-1. Their lone loss was to St. Mary Springs, that Colby fans are familiar with from 21.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big upset. Mayville just snuck into the playoffs there. They were 4-5, 3-6 in their conference, but got the big win. So
that's insane.
They get a tough matchup. And then obviously the other big storyline I'm keeping an eye on, Colton Burnell. Last week set the all-time career rushing mark in Wisconsin football, regardless of division. He plays for Columbus. Columbus is a 3-seed, opposite side of the bracket. Team that a lot of experts are picking to be at state against possibly even a Colby. So somebody we'll be keeping an eye on. But yeah, he's got potentially up to 4 more weeks to add to his record. I mean, he's well over 6,000 yards in his career.
Wow. So wait, okay, put that in perspective for me on the math there. To get to 6,000, how many yards would he have to average per season? Obviously more than 1,000.
He would have had to average 1,500 yards per year.
Wow.
Freshman through senior year. Now, obviously he put 2,000 up last year. He's well over 2,000 this year. So a lot of that has been the last 2 years, but he's been a big part of that Columbus offense that last year in D4 gave Catholic Memorial a run for their money in the state championship game.
Wow.
So
good for that kid.
Yep. But we got one game we really are focused on right now. So St. Croix Falls, 6-4, 5-2 in the Heart of North Conference. Conference that a lot of people are familiar with, that whole corridor up 53 north of Eau Claire. Their 4 losses were all to playoff teams. They lost to Unity, 22-8, 5-seed in D6. They lost to Grantsburg, gave Grantsburg a heck of a game, 27-20. Yeah. Grantsburg undefeated.
I was going to say, Grantsburg's no joke either.
Yep, undefeated in D6. They're a 1-seed, 12-0 when you count their forfeits. Bloomer, a 7-seed in D4, got pretty beat up by Mosinee, but playing up a division. And
Yeah.
then they lost to Northwestern, who we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
The 2 seed. They do have wins. Only 2 of those are against playoff teams, though. They that's Cameron, a 3 seed in D6, and Cumberland, an 8 seed in D6. Then they also beat a couple teams that are at the bottom of their conference: Spooner, Chautauqua Weyerhaeuser, Barron. But they got an upset over a team that, again, Colby fans will be familiar with. They went to Neillsville last week, beat Neillsville Granton 20-6.
Yeah.
In a 5-4 matchup to get here.
Yeah. So now somebody would be like, well, barely beat Neillsville. Who cares? People got to remember that was Colby's first team of the year. And that was 27-7.
Yeah.
And it didn't start out good in that first quarter. Neillsville had a lot of bigs, and we were on the ropes. And then, but, we're second half team, we were able to put the juice on.
Neillsville, they beat Mondovi, a 1 seed.
Which, how does that happen?
They were good. And that was a conference where everybody kind of beat each other.
Yeah.
Regis had a loss in there this year. Mondovi had a loss. Durand, Arkansas barely made the playoffs out of that conference. Gave Colby everything they could handle last week.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that in a minute. But Colby fans will be familiar with the running game from St. Croix Falls. We talked about a little bit. Aiden Mader back again in his 10 games, 196 carries, 1,524 yards. 19 touchdowns, only 1 fumble. I mean, he's going to be the focus point of the offense.
And I think, so if we're going to, speaking of fumbles, and if we can kind of talk about this Colby-St. Croix matchup, to me, that is going to be key. One thing that has been very common with this Hornet football team is that fumbles are becoming a common occurrence. Even against, oh my gosh, just had a brain fart. Edit that out. Even against the team that they played just last weekend, 4 fumbles.
Yeah.
Even if 2 of those get recovered and those could have been turned into scores, that ball game is over. But luckily, only 1 was recovered. So that's going to be the thing of having our runners hang on to that ball and not give those turnovers. But somebody would say, like, okay, well, how come Colby's doing so well and giving up these fumbles? Because the defense has been that good.
Yeah.
They just have been. And specifically against the run. The run has just been a shutdown. So talking about that same Durand, Arkansas team, they passed for 330 some odd yards. That's half of what they threw through the entire season against Colby. 12 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Couldn't move the ball on the ground.
And you saw the change when they took the big, tall quarterback, put him outside, and just let him go up for jump balls. And, they were just throwing them up to him. And that's something that I think teams are going to see. Now,
I think the word is out.
Now, the question is a team built for that? Looking at St. Croix Falls, I don't think they're necessarily built for that the same way that some of the teams that Colby might see next week are. Their quarterback, Jaden Adams, has only completed 36% of his passes. Mm-hmm. 590 yards, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
Yeah.
They've only thrown the ball 89 times all season across 9 games. He hasn't even played all 10. Mm-hmm. Or he had a game where he didn't even throw a pass. So, it's not necessarily that. I don't think St. Croix Falls is set up like that. We'll talk about the other 2 teams in the bracket in a minute that are way more set up to exploit that.
And I see what you're saying. What you're basically trying to say is St. Croix Falls is looking at the tape and say, we're going to try to match what Durand did to Colby, but, does that actually mean you have a team that designed to that? And are you getting yourself into more trouble?
Well, it'd be very similar to saying to Coach Hagan, all right, Coach, you can only run the ball 6 times next week. You have to throw the ball every other play.
Yep.
Colby is just not set up for that.
Mm-hmm.
Colby, are they capable of throwing the ball? Yes. Are they capable of only throwing the ball? I would say probably, you would agree with me, probably not. Mm. It's a run-first team. The run sets up the pass. St. Croix Falls is very similar to that. But
so you're probably right. So this game would probably be nose to the gridiron battle, a genuine battle in the trenches.
I would not be shocked to see a 14-7, good old Schlabberknocker kind of game out there.
Schlabberknocker. It's going to be like a frozen Schlabberknocker.
Yeah, it's going to be cold. Or it could be that neither team can stop the run from the other side, and it ends up, both teams rack up 600 yards of rushing. And
I know, and then it's going to be like, will there be like a Hail Mary ball, or will there be a runner or a tailback that's wide open?
Yep.
And you saw that like at the beginning, there was the mini Bauer, as we were calling him. There was one, he was just wide open. There wasn't any zip code nearby him, and he was just wide open because Colby was invested in pouring in the run at that point.
Yeah, so we'll see that's going to be the big matchup. If St. Croix Falls can exploit that offensively and find a passing game, it's going to be problems because that's been kind of Colby's Achilles heel. But, the big question is going to be, can they, in the conditions you're going to be in? It's going to have rained. It's going to be cold. That ball's going to be hard.
Yeah. Not easy to pass. It's not that it's hard to pass in that. It's hard to catch in those.
Yes.
Now, you said this is what St. Croix has to worry about. What does Colby have to worry about or focus on?
I think if you're Colby defensively, it is getting up front, stopping up front. They've done a great job of that. St. Croix Falls comes in as a team that is built to run the ball. Mm-hmm. And outside of Edgar, most of the teams that Colby has seen this year has been kind of trying to do a little of both.
Yeah.
Marathon obviously throws the ball a ton when you've got the talent they have at the passing game. Pittsville likes to mix it up a bit. Mm-hmm. Auburndale obviously throws the ball a lot. And Auburndale did that, losing their star, beat Colby after losing their star receiver midway through that game.
Right.
So, we've seen that teams can throw, but can Colby stop the run enough to force St. Croix Falls to force them into throwing situations and get them off?
Yeah.
Because if you can force a team like that into a throwing situation where you can drop back and you know what's coming and you don't have to worry about the run because it's, say, 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 8.
Yeah.
Then it's easier to defend the pass. Still not Colby's strong point, but if you can drop back into a nickel or a dime where you've got extra defensive backs, you got guys not even thinking about the run that you normally would have to, that will help you in defending the passing game.
Gotcha.
But that's easier said than done.
Yeah, easier said than done. Well, so we got that game covered. Just as a friendly reminder, in case you can't make it to that game, Sports on Focus is going to get everything set up over there in Seatown, and we will be doing the play-by-play, and you'll be providing that live link for that game. Any other key matchups in that Division 5 you want to focus on? Well,
looking at the bottom half, two very good teams, the 2-3. Stanley Boyd, a team.
Those are like nosebleed games. When a 2 and a 3 meet up with each other, those games are just lights out exciting.
And obviously Stanley Boyd, Colby's familiar with them, played them a ton back in the old Clover Belt days.
Yeah.
But, they've got very similar record to Colby. A couple, they only have 2 teams that they played that didn't make the playoffs this year. Mm-hmm. They beat a ton of playoff teams. Elk Mound snuck in with an upset of Neillsville Grant in week 9, but they beat Durand, Arkansas 33-8 week 9.
Wow.
Their 2 losses were to Mondovi and to Regis.
So Stanley Boyd is back.
Yes. And there's where you get that fear. Stanley Boyd comes in with everything that Colby has problems with. Tall receiver, good quarterback, good. They still.
Yeah. When you say tall receiver, how tall?
They don't have his height listed, but he looks tall.
Like over 6 foot?
Oh yeah.
Oh, great.
So you're going to be dealing with some of that stuff that Colby had trouble with against.
Hurlbert.
Yeah.
Number 7.
Yep. And
he's tattooed on my brain.
And then you go to the other side, Northwestern. Northwestern's Northwestern.
So when you say Northwestern is Northwestern, like balanced offense?
Balanced offense. They've been good forever. And they've been good despite everything that goes against them being basically a collection of itty-bitty tiny towns between Superior and Ashland.
Yeah, so, okay, I was just about to ask that. So you asked me that before, like, oh, man, they got to travel to Northwestern. And I'm like, where's that? So it's literally it's the communities of Superior and Ashland.
So it's all those little towns, Maple, and I can't think of the other ones. The school's in Maple. But there are all these little tiny, like Unity-sized towns.
Now, this is like Bayfield County or around Bayfield County?
Douglas County, Bayfield County, towards Ashland County, way up north there.
Oh, my
all
gosh.
along Highway 2. So it's a lot of little towns, and they have one big high school that they all go to. Yeah. And they've been good in football for as long as I've been involved. I mean, we can go back to 2019. You know, the really good Stratford team that was unscored upon had to go up to Northwestern in level 3. Northwestern's been a 1 seed more often than not. They bounce between Division 4, Division 5. Mm-hmm. So you see them, you know, sometimes they're up with the Mosinese of the world, and sometimes they're playing down with in Division 5. So it's a big school, a lot of kids. They've been very good for a long time. I haven't seen them. I personally have never actually seen Northwestern. I just know them from different...
Just legends and stories and tales.
But, you know, there again, they've got, you know, a common opponent. They played St. Croix Falls, beat them 26-7.
Wow.
But...
Well, you know, so you talk about balance. For 41 touchdowns, 15 touchdowns passing, rushing just over 2,700 yards, over 1,000 yards passing.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are ridiculous high school numbers.
And in a conference where they probably haven't had to pass as much. You know,
True.
Being in the heart of North the way it currently is for the last time this year, you know, when you get to play Baron Spooner and Shatek Weyerhaeuser, you know, you get some extra little benefits there. You get to maybe take a game off. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you know, a team like Colby, week 2 you had your off game.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was playoff caliber team every single week. So it's interesting to see how that'll break down. And this is where we can talk a little bit about seeding. Colby with 2 losses got the 1. Northwestern only lost 1 game this year, and they got the 2.
Yeah, so...
And it's solely because Colby played a brutal schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to look at the fact that Colby's schedule, like overall, you take all 9 teams, they played a .530 winning percentage. Mm-hmm. Over 400 for the defeated opponents, counting out Auburndale and Edgar. Mm-hmm. Like Pittsville, who didn't even make the playoffs, was good. Abbotsford was good. Marathon was good. Iowa Scandinavia made the playoffs. Loyal made the playoffs. So, like, you played a lot of really good teams, and that got you the 1.
Yep.
And that means that Northwestern has to make the long trip to Colby if they win.
Yeah.
And not Colby making the long trip to Northwestern.
Thank you, computer. As long as Colby gets through St. Croix Falls.
St. Croix Falls. Like, that's the first one. You got to get through St. Croix Falls 1 week at a time, survive in advance.
Yep.
The old adage from the NCAA tournament, which really applied to Colby
last
week.
No kidding.
But yeah, I mean, quick check in with the other 2 remaining 1 seeds, because Winnebago Lutheran was the 4th 1 seed. They lost to Mayville, so they're out. Wittenberg Burnhamwood, that's potentially an opponent for Colby down the road. They've got Amherst this week. That'll be a tough one, but they lost 1 game to Stratford this year,
dude,
including beating Iowa Scandinavia 40-28. They beat Spencer Columbus 62-0.
These are just sounding better and better.
And they beat a D3 playoff qualifier in Anago 56-7.
They've always had a decent football team, haven't they?
Anago?
No, Wittenberg Burnhamwood.
They've been better as of late.
Okay.
The last few years they've really come on. They had they lost to Amherst in level 4 a couple years ago. Things like that, but yeah, they've definitely been coming on the last probably 5 years, been getting better and better. Mm-hmm. This year they finished 2nd in the Central Wisconsin Large, Colby's new conference, to Stratford.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Beat Amherst for the first time in a while. Really had a good year, and they're going to be looking to make a run, and there's another passing team.
Yep.
And on the other side of the bracket, everybody in Colby's favorite team, the Aquinas Blue
Gold. Oh, yeah, what's a Blue Gold? Yeah.
Lost their first game. They've now won 9 in a row.
Wow.
Lost to Prairie du Chien week 1, 16-12, and they've rolled everybody since.
Well, that's a good spot for them on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah, that would be a state opponent if Colby were to make it, but got to get through first.
I was to say, got to take care of the Saints first.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, and then, we'll see how everything else breaks down. I don't know if there's really anybody Colby fans should be cheering for in that other game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at if you're looking at Stanley Boyd, they they don't have a 2,000 yard season. They're darn close to it, but man, 19 touchdowns and 1,700 yards passing. That's a pretty balanced offense as well. And Stanley Boyd is culturally, that's a football town. They have more up years than down years.
Oh yeah.
So they gotta be pretty gosh darn excited of where they're at right now.
Oh, for sure. And I think they feel like they're in a good position. And they played tough competition already. When you got to go play a Regis, when you got to go play a Mondovi, when you've got to go play Neilsville Granton, who was pretty good this year.
I was to say they weren't the typical Neilsville Granton team. They were better.
No. I mean, let's be honest. I went back to 2000 and couldn't find a time other than that weird 2020 when everybody made the playoffs.
Yeah.
That they even made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an up year for them, so that was huge. But, and they're going to come in tough. They're going to give Northwestern a tough game. You worry about the trip, and then you see who comes next week. And if Colby survives. And again, this is all if Colby survives. That's going to be the big question, if they can stop that rushing game from St. Croix Falls.
Exactly. Well, cool. Well, anything else?
Just reminders on focus.news/sports-live-streaming.
That's a lot of dashes.
Or on focus.news/sports. Or just go find the Hornets Nest. Matt will have the link to it as well.
Well, we're going to plop it around somewhere. And then, kickoff for that Colby St. Croix Falls game is going to be at 7 p.m. And then, a lot of different ways to try to track it down.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time to come through here. Lots of football are stacked in your brain there, but you make it sound so easy for the rest of us. So thank you so much for stopping by. And if you like this video, hit the little like button there down at the bottom. Share this